I'm really happy to start this day with introduction of an incredible producer, creative producer, Steve Longi. Today, we have a masterclass that I've been waiting for impatiently, to be honest with all of you. Not just because he's an incredible person, but also because Steve has a unique set of knowledge that he acquired all over, I don't know, Steve, what, 20 years of experience or something like that. Financing films via studios, via independent financing sources. You know, even living and working in Hollywood for 20 years, maybe 30 years, some people don't really have that knowledge because it's not just about overnight success that takes 20 years, which is a common say here in Los Angeles. We all heard that one. But it's also about individual qualities of producers. And oftentimes it's about, you know, going around this famous catch-22 that Steve is going to talk about, where you have to have a star to raise the capital, but then you have to have a capital to get a star. So without further ado, I'm giving this space to Steve Longi. Steve.
Thank you. Well, Gia, thank you for that introduction. That's very kind of you. And yes, I have about 20 plus years of experience in the film industry. So, and I've got this outline that I think everybody's going to have access to, and I'm going to go through the outline kind of quick today because there's a lot to cover, and literally this outline could be like a 20-week course. So there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of stories that I can tell and examples I can give. So I'm going to try not to bog down too much into all that and just kind of stick with the outline. And if anybody has any questions, can certainly either save them for the end, or if there's something that you really need to ask me, just jump in and interrupt them, and I'm happy to do that. So, okay, so the first, like the easiest way to raise financing for your film is to have an A-list actor wanting to star in it, or an A-list director wanting to direct it. And that is the thing that triggers usually somebody wanting to write a check. Now, the reason for that is screenplays, not everybody knows what a screenplay actually is, what a good screenplay or a great screenplay is. A lot of people really don't know how to read a screenplay, and a lot of people, you'd be surprised, don't really have the vision to know whether or not a screenplay can be a great movie. So when they know, let's say, for example, Robert Downey Jr. attaches himself to a film, they know he's a great actor, and they trust his judgment. And so that's really what gets people to want to write a check, especially financiers who may not have those creative, you know, abilities or have that vision. And in my experience, even people in the film and TV business, executives especially, sometimes do not really have that vision. And having vision for your film or your series is something that you're going to need to work on conveying to people. And the better you are conveying your vision, the better chance you have of somebody getting it, seeing your vision, and then wanting to write a big check. Okay. Now, of course, yes, having an A-list actor attached gets your film financed, but how do you do that? That's what we're going to talk about in this course. Now, the other way, more conventional way, I see my outline just keeps, it's not staying popped up here, but the more conventional way to do this is to set your film up with a production company or a studio or a streamer. And again, not necessarily an easy thing to do, a little more challenging with a streamer or with a studio, but production companies are definitely places that you can query. You can send a query letter, and we're going to talk about what a query letter is. Production companies generally do not have financing or distribution. They're just run by producers. And a studio and or a streamer, they do have financing already, so they can make pay or play offers to your talent. So you set a project up at a studio or a streamer, you already have the financing, they're going to put up the financing. Okay, that's very different from going out and raising independent financing, but that would be the win, to be able to set it up with a studio or a streamer. Next best thing would be to set up with a production company. Like I mentioned, production companies generally don't have distribution or financing, but they have access to talent, and they have access to production companies, studios, or mid-level production companies that might actually have financing or distribution. So let me just recap. So there's sort of three levels. There's the studio or the streamer, okay? Then there's a production company that has maybe a staff of people and have the relationships with talent and with agents. So if they acquire your screenplay, which would occur through like an option agreement, we're going to talk about that too. They would then approach agencies and studios and streamers in an effort to either attach talent or to formally set the project up, where then they will have the financing to make pay or play offers. So that's the key with talent. You have to be able to make what's called a pay or play offer, and I'm going to talk about what that is. Yeah, my outline keeps, let's say, sorry. I just have to keep putting my password in here. Okay, so the third way is to finance the project yourself, or to raise independent financing through investors. And I will talk about some examples of that, people that have done that. But the preferred way is to set it up with a production company, or to attach a producer, because you're definitely going to need someone who's experienced to take you through this process. Now, you can pursue one or all of these simultaneously, but your material, the film that you have, will ultimately dictate the direction that you take. So if it's a very small kind of one location, low budget film, that might just be an independent film that you're going to finance using investors. If it's a more high concept film that could be shown on Netflix, that has, you know, great roles for stars and is a very commercial kind of property, you might be able to go the other way. But you can, which is through a studio or streamer. But you can pursue all of these simultaneously. The object of this process is to present your project in a way where people can see that vision and want to get involved, want to option your screenplay, want to partner with you to then put the time and the energy in. I'm talking about experienced producers who will then be able to approach agencies, approach studios and production companies that maybe you won't be able to do as effectively. But I'm going to talk about how you can do it. Now we should talk about the role of agents and managers. I'm not going to talk a lot about agents and managers, because what I'm going to be talking about in this course is the idea of you going to producers, aligning with a producer to help you through this process. So that's going to be my preferred way, and that's what we're going to cover more than anything. But just real quick, agents are basically deal makers. As you probably know, they represent writers, producers, directors, actors, certainly. They are licensed by the state of California in this case, and they are really the only people licensed to procure work for their clients. Not a lot of people know that. Managers also represent writers, directors, and actors, but managers are not so much deal makers. They're more like career builders, and they strategize for trying to guide people in their careers, and they read screenplays, and they're just a little more engaged. They're a little easier to reach. So if you're trying to reach an actor, sometimes going through their manager is going to be a lot easier. Agents tend to be very tough, which a lot of you may know, to reach. But we're gonna talk about different things you can do to get their attention, and different approaches that will be more effective than others. Now, you can query agents and managers, but again, like I said, querying producers and production companies is a better way to go, in my opinion, or the way I'm going to talk about in this course. Query, if you don't know what query means, query just basically means to send an email that has like your log line. It's basically you approaching a producer or a manager and saying, hey, I've got a great screenplay, would you take a look at it? So that's what we call a query letter. And I'm going to talk about all the components of a query letter. Okay, now before you start, understand that this is going to be a process. It's going to take time. So I say give yourself no less than a year, because otherwise you're going to get discouraged really quick, because this is a very challenging kind of thing. And it's just going to be a numbers game. So basically don't take any of it personally. Just go out there, believe in your work, get good at handling rejection. There's a great movie called Mistress that you should see. It's about the film business. It stars Robert De Niro. It's an older film, but there's a great saying in that movie. This is a saying that De Niro keeps saying with respect to all the rejection he's getting, because De Niro's a movie producer in this film. And he says that he's got a hide like a rhinoceros. So he's got a very tough hide. So he doesn't care about rejection too much. He's just a full believer in what he's doing, and he just barrels forward and doesn't give up. So that should be your attitude. You should adopt the attitude that you have a hide like a rhinoceros, okay? And just let rejection trickle off your back. I would set aside a budget for this endeavor, okay? So if it's going to take a year, 2 years, however much time you're giving yourself, have a budget that of a little fund that you can draw on for maybe taking some courses, for maybe putting together a film budget, which we'll talk about, which does cost some money, maybe creating some materials, which we're going to talk about, like a movie poster. But have a little budget for that, because you don't want to go into this going, oh wow, okay, I need to create a movie poster for my film. I don't have the money, and then you have to sort of wait until you have the money. So get all that stuff together so you're ready to engage right away. Talked about gig. Okay, also adopt the right frame, because I meet a lot of people who are sort of like apologists when they approach me, and I want people coming up to me talking about how great their project is, not making apologies for it, okay? Or not, yeah, okay, so maybe they're interrupting me, or maybe they're coming up to me in the middle of a party or something, or they're emailing me, querying me over an email. Look, this is what I do. Not every, it's something that I accept. I'm a producer. I want people to approach me with great stories, great screenplays, great projects. Okay. I might be a little, I may not engage so quickly, because I'm going to want to suss you out. I'm going to want to see if what you have is of interest. All right. And producers are like this, and it's kind of like dating. I kind of equate this to the dating process. So it's like you want to kind of warm up to somebody, get to know them a little bit, and sending a cold email is one way to start the introduction. But just understand that may not be the be all and end all. You may have to send a few emails. You may have to create some type of engagement with the producer. Sometimes, if a producer gets back to you, I always say that's better than just being ignored. So, but always look to create some type of engagement with a producer. Maybe when you first reach out to a producer, you're not just all of a sudden pitching your project. Maybe you're saying, hey, are you interested in looking at projects? Or, hey, can you tell me what kinds of projects you're interested in taking a look at? So just think about this as a process, and a process of creating engagement with that producer. Because it's just not going to be easy right away. And producers just naturally they kind of have that wall up, because they're just being bombarded by a million people. But if you have the right project, if you have a great project, you have a project that producer is looking for, you're going to get their attention ultimately, and they're going to engage with you, and they're going to want to take a look at your project. So adopt the frame that you're bringing something great to them, right? That you have something that they're going to want, okay? Not that you're bothering them, or that you're interrupting them, or whatever, because that's generally how a lot of us can be. But as long as you remain professional, and if you're tenacious and you're professional and you're polite, and you give a producer a chance to respond, right? You have to give them, maybe 2 weeks to respond, even just to an email. And you're not acting like all impatient, like, hey, why didn't you get back to me? I think ultimately a producer will respect that tenacity. That's what we respect, are people that really keep going. And I always use that as kind of like a marker. Like if somebody has a great project, if I see that they're not giving up, I have to then say to myself at some point, you know, if I haven't had a chance to get back to them at that juncture, I have to say, they might have something really good. That's why they're not giving up, right? Because that sends a sort of an unwritten message to me that, yeah, this might be something I should be paying attention to. Okay, so also keep really detailed records of everything you're doing. Save all your emails, save all your text messages. Just keep a log of who you're submitting projects to, who you're emailing, because you're also going to want to follow up, and you're also going to probably need to email people more than once. I say you have to usually email people, 2 or 3 times before you get their attention. So this is just, again, going to be a process. This is going to take some time, and you should get yourself prepared and be ready to go through this process. And again, not worry about rejection, not worry about any of that kind of stuff. Just keep moving forward. Just keep believing in your project. Just be very passionate about what you're doing, and don't worry too much about the outcome. So passionate about this process, indifferent with the outcome, indifferent about any rejection you might be getting, or non-answers, or just people ignoring you. Don't worry about it. Just keep moving on. Subscribe to IMDb Pro. It only costs well, it's maybe about $150 a year, I think. There are places you can get some discounts, so you could search around for those. I think there is one place I'll have to look into that gives you, I think, a 15% discount on IMDb Pro. But again, that's going to cost a little bit of money. But IMDb Pro, which is a listing of producers, studios, production companies, actors with all of their agency information, that is a source that maybe you already know about, but you should definitely be subscribed to IMDb Pro, because it gives you a whole lot more contact information for the producers and production companies you're going to be reaching out to. I think it's a company called Raintree. If you sign up for Raintree, which I think is free, I think they give you a discount on IMDb Pro. The other thing is to just find out who the people are who are making movies. So you want to know, my dad was in real estate, and he always said, if you want to be successful at real estate, establish a really strong relationship with all the banks, because the banks are the ones that are putting up the money for people to buy real estate. So the banks in this case would be the studios and the streamers. And then again, the next level down would be the producers or production companies that might have first look deals with the studios and streamers. So you want to go to them because they have the relationships with the banks. But find out who those people are. Read Deadline.com, read Variety, read The Hollywood Reporter. There are some newer news sources and information sources, but Deadline.com is the main one. And if you read Deadline.com, it'll list all the producers, and you can go to IMDb Pro and look those producers up and see if they have contact information, phone numbers and addresses and emails, and you can then email them about your project. If you have a similar project, if you see somebody is big into like high concept comedy, like you read an article about a film being made about a high concept comedy, you can go to IMDb Pro, see if there's contact information of that producer, and say, hey, I see you're interested in high concept comedies. I have a great high concept comedy for you. And you can query them. Okay, so let's talk about the materials you're going to need now to do this querying. Just getting back to IMDb Pro, a real quick little tip on how to use it. If you go, let's say you go to, let's say it lists a production company, New Regency, and then you go to the New Regency production company page, it's going to list executives at that company. So on the home page of New Regency on IMDb Pro, it may not list an email. So you want to click on each individual executive, preferably the appropriate executives who will be the ones who are open to reading scripts. And that's going to be like story editors and development executives. You need to click on that person's name and then look at the contact info. And that person might have a direct email or even an email to maybe another production company that they maybe it's their own personal production company apart from the one that they're working for, because a lot of producers have that, and that might indicate another email you can reach them at. So that's just a little trick. So you have to kind of do a deep dive on IMDb Pro sometimes to actually see the appropriate emails or direct contact emails. Okay, so some materials and tools you're going to need apart from the usual stuff like Final Draft or Word or Excel. So the log line, let's talk about your log line. Now, I think most people know what a log line is, but the log line is basically 1 or 2 sentences, 2 or 3 sentences told from the point of view of your protagonist. okay, that introduces the conflict, what your protagonist is going to have to face, okay, and the conflict ultimately is going to create some kind of change in your protagonist, so you might want to tease that, also in your log line. But it's just basically a couple sentences overview of your screenplay, of your story. Now, I say that the log line is one of the most important pieces of writing you will ever do, because this is the thing that people may only have enough time to take a look at your log line. So your log line is going to have to be really, really strong in hooking them to want to read your script. Okay, so that's a tool you're going to really need to hone and work on, is your log line. And in my experience, with writers are generally not sort of hardwired to write 2 or 3 sentences. They're just hardwired to write a whole lot more. That's just their inclination. But so this might be something that's really challenging for you to do. So you may have to get someone else to do it for you. But the more effective your log line is, the better chance you're going to have of getting someone to want to read your script and then want to finance your movie. So I would recommend spending a good deal of time getting that log line perfect. And I just didn't have a lot of time to give lots of examples of great log lines, but the log line to Hacksaw Ridge, the film that I produced, which of course was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, ultimately a very successful film. But the log line was really, and I could just paraphrase it, was just about a man, a very devout religious man, who goes into World War II, refusing to bear arms, becomes a medic, and winds up winning the Congressional Medal of Honor. So you could see the components of that log line are very strong. You have a very devout religious man who, right, so that's your protagonist who goes into World War II. That's the conflict, obviously, very obviously, and winds up winning the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's kind of how it ends. And sometimes you're going to want to tease the ending. You're going to want to introduce your protagonist, introduce the conflict, and then tease what might happen in the ending, because you don't really want to give the ending away. So so that's just kind of like a real quick overview on how you want to design that log line, and how you want to create a log line that then gets people to really engage with it and want to read your script. So again, keep it to a few sentences. Just keep it really concise. Also, I come across a lot of log lines that are very vague in the way they're telling the story. So try to be as specific as you can about those elements, because I read a lot of log lines that they're just very they're just vague, with a lot of flowery kind of verbiage, and that just doesn't really mean anything, so just try to be very specific in how you're laying out your log line. Now, some of the best log lines have kind of an ironic twist to them. So the Hacksaw Ridge log line, it is kind of ironic that a guy would go into World War II and not want to bear arms, not want to use a gun. But that's what made the story great. Desmond Doss wanted to serve his country, but he was going to do it on his own terms, and his terms were to become a medic and to heal people instead of to hurt people. So that was the great irony, and I think that's what made that movie. It just took that story to a whole nother level. So look for that, maybe that ironic twist in your log line. If you look at some of the great log lines, you'll see a lot of them do have that ironic twist. Okay, so so that's one tool you're going to want to have. You're going to want to really work on and hone that log line. And we're going to come back to all these pieces, and I'm going to show you how to fit them into a query letter. So that's what we're moving towards, is the creation of this query letter that you can then send to these producers and production companies. All right, the next thing is a synopsis. I think, again, most people know what a synopsis is, but for me, a synopsis is going to be like 1 or 2 pages. This is about storytelling. You're going to be telling people the beats, giving them the beats of your story. And again, you want to be specific. You don't want to be vague, and you don't want to be describing the story. You want to be telling the story. So tell the story in a couple pages. On your summary will be on like a separate document, but on that document, be sure to have the log line at the top. Always be reiterating the log line, because people are going to need to be able to wrap their head around the overview of what the beginning, middle, and end is, and then that's going to help them be able to read the synopsis and understand it a lot better. So this process, again, is a process of engagement. And so if you give them a strong log line, and sometimes, like, I'm coming into the email and I'm just like clicking on the synopsis, and I'm not seeing I'm like, I either don't remember what the log line is, or I'm not seeing it there. So just have the log line, always reiterate that log line again on your 2-page synopsis document, because that's going to be a document. So have that up top. And again, the synopsis is going to be a summary in the beginning, middle, and end of your story. So it's going to be the 3 acts. And just to include the major beats of your story, or what we refer to as the plot of your story. All right, now the other materials you're going to have, again, that we're going to utilize for this query letter, like a cast list. Okay, so you have a script, you have this story. Create cast lists for the main roles. Okay, the starring roles. Who are the actors that can be in this movie, and have like an A list, a B list, and a C list. Okay, so sort of show people, maybe like or just know for yourself the 3 different ways this movie can be made. So here's like the A level it can be made, the B level it can be made, or maybe like the C level it can be made. Okay, because all that's going to be determined by budget. So if you have Bradley Cooper in the A level, right, that's going to be probably a fairly pricey film, probably $15 million or more, perhaps. But it could be like a passion project that Bradley Cooper wants to do. Okay, so there are all these like qualifying things that I'm just not going to have a lot of time to get into. But there you could have a screenplay that's like a project, and or some A-list movie star agrees to do that for the least amount of money, or their SAG, Screen Actors Guild minimum. Okay, because that's what determines what an actor gets paid, the least amount an actor can get paid. But most actors are getting paid well and above the minimums. But you might have a screenplay that's such a terrific piece of material that an actor agrees to do it, like at their cost. So that can affect budget sometimes, and maybe if you have a film that seems expensive because you've got A-list cast, maybe they're not charging what they would usually charge. And that's how most all of these smaller films get made, because most of these smaller films can't afford to pay these actors $15-20 million. Almost all of them have a different price point for films that they want to make, as opposed to, let's say, the superhero films or the comic book films that maybe actors, they like doing them, but they're doing them because they're more about, it's a payday, and gives them a chance to expose their talent, and to have people bring them the kind of films that they want to do, which are like the Academy Award winning films, or the films that really get them the notice for their acting. So that's very important for an artist. Remember, you're approaching these people. Producers are artists, so they're going to respond. They're not always responding to the financial aspects of your project. They're going to respond to the creative aspects. Okay, so a synopsis, that's I've talked about that, sorry. So cast list, just be making those cast lists of the stars. Director list, same thing, be making lists of directors who, potential directors who could direct your project. On those lists, have the agency information. Okay, this will be important, because if you have 3 actors that can presumably be in your film, and they're all at the same agency, then approach that agency and be talking about how it can become an agency package for them. So they have 3 potential clients. Sometimes that can incentivize them. Not always, but that's an approach. The other thing is, yeah.
Steve, real quick, I just wanted to clarify for everyone that what Steve's talking about, it's the wish list for cast and directors, right, Steve? So, people understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also just make a list of like the type of actor you want. And I'll talk about that when we get to the query letter, because when you're reaching out to a producer, you could say, this is the kind of project that would be right for a Bradley Cooper, Robert Downey Jr., right? And it's like, if that producer has already made a movie with that star, for example, he might have a relationship with that actor where he could just pick up the phone and say, hey, I just came across a script, which I think is an amazing story about XYZ that you would be amazing for you. Or, when we were on the set, you were talking about, you wanted to make a movie about, let's say this person, let's say it's a true story, and someone just came to me with a script, right? So it just kind of connects the dots for the producer. It's not that you're saying it can only be these actors, but you're just saying it could be this type of actor. So yes, so make your wish list. I was taught, and I think this is very good advice in life, start at the top, right? Reach for the highest point, and then work your way down from there. So if you get rejected from the best people, right? Fine. So just keep working your way down. At least you're not determining, like if you start in the middle and you're being rejected, like you've already determined the middle is the top. That's the highest you can ever go. It's like you're sort of in charge with how things work out in your life, right? Because it's based on the decisions you're making or the reactions that you're having to what's occurring to you in life. You have a choice. You have a choice on how to react. You have a choice on what type of action to take. So I always say, shoot for the stars, go for the top. Okay. Don't put all your eggs in that one basket. Start high. And again, adopt the frame that you have a hide like a rhinoceros. You're not going to worry about that rejection, but take your shots. Always take your shots. Absolutely no downside to taking the shot. Okay. I think I put in here a little later on, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So think about that for a minute. You miss 100%. Any chance you don't take can't happen. Anyway, I think it's kind of a powerful saying. I think you have this on screen now, so I think I can look on screen. Okay, so create these lists, because these lists are going to factor into the creation of your query letter and the other materials, and these lists are going to determine your strategy for raising that financing, for attaching these various elements in order to trigger raising financing. Okay, I want to keep going back to the raising of financing because that's really what this is all about. But just understand that how effectively you put together all these materials and how effectively your outreach actually is at the end of the day is going to determine how better your chances are, or how good your chances are on actually raising your money or finding the financing. So we have the list. Yeah. Oh, and then the other list, I think I said this, just a list of production companies and producers that you want to approach. And again, they can be found on their contact information can be found on IMDb Pro. And if you read deadline.com and you stay on top of industry news and you do your research on who these producers are who are making movies, they will become part of the list of producers that you want to approach. All right. Now, the other thing is you want to make a list of comparable films to your screenplay, right? So if you have a film that's a comedy, what other comedies is it like? Okay, if it's a dramatic film, what other dramatic films is it like, right? So to try, like, what is the tone of your film? What is the genre of your film? All these things you want to kind of assess or analyze, and you want to create comps, what they call comps or comparables. So what other films are comparable to the film that you're trying to sell? So that's important because that, again, helps a person wrap their head around what it actually is that they're going to be taking a look at. Okay, now it's important to try to stay in the same genre because that'd be kind of a little weird going outside of the genre. People try to like mix and match that, but it's rare that that's done really well or really effectively. So like, some people will say, oh, it's a cross between, Star Wars and Jaws, but a lot of times those types of crisscrossing to try to describe what it is that you have. They're just not really well thought out, and people just don't do them very effectively. So they just don't work really well. But if you can come up with something that's like really effective in that regard, then okay. But that's just something you're going to have to really have to work on. And again, I could do a whole hour on how to do that effectively, but that's just something that you're going to have to put some time and energy into. And sometimes it's just better to say, it's a lot like, the tone of it, the genre is very similar to these other films. So have some comps. Don't use TV comps for films. Don't use film comps for TV projects, because they just film works very differently than TV. So again, you're just trying to give a person a sense of what it is, and so don't mix formats, I would say. That's also very dicey. Okay. The next thing that you might want to think about having, and I alluded to this earlier, is some artwork, which is basically just like a visual, right? So a movie poster would be one example of this. If you make, and I think I've included a movie poster that I did for a project that I'm working on called Fate. I think I also have the promo reel for Fate, which I've included in the material, so you can take a look at how I designed that. Yeah, there it is. So this is a poster that I created using a program called Canva. So Canva, Canva, is a very inexpensive, I think it's free actually. And if not, might cost a few bucks, but you can create your own movie posters using Canva. And so with this poster, you can see this was just, we just designed it ourselves and picked out the photo ourselves and the font. And you can, Canva's fairly simple to use, and for not a lot of money, or maybe even free, you can create your own movie poster. And I think it's really effective to show people, what, again, people just keep this in mind, the people that you're talking to, even producers and actors, and this is just a natural thing. People just don't have tons of vision. Some people have better than others, they're a little more creative than others, but you just really want to show people what you're seeing. And the more that you can make it real for them, and when you have the movie poster, and you can see I have the billing block, that's just a fake billing block. I don't have any of those people attached, any of those stars attached, but I just created a billing block just to make it look like it was a real movie. And I use this in my materials. So I use this in my pitch deck and in my promo reel, and we're going to talk about what those things are. I don't send any materials with the query letter until someone asks for them. And again, this is a process of engagement, so I don't want to give them everything all at once with the query letter. I want to kind of tease them, and I want the log line to be the thing that's really hooking them. And then if they say, yeah, send the script, I might send the script, and I might attach the artwork with the script. So they have the script, and they have something that they can actually look at that represents what it might look like, as a movie poster. Also, you can put the rating on there. Rating is important too when people are assessing projects and things. Some people just want to do, family friendly content. So others just don't want to do R-rated stuff because it's a little too restrictive. They want to stick with PG-13, which is a more commercial rating for theatrically released product. So the movie poster can give all this information, kind of show somebody whether or not it's the kind of thing they're looking for in a visual. So, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So create a visual, and that will be able to convey, your creative vision for your project a lot better. So that's the artwork. Use Canva to create that. Okay, then we have back to the query letter. So now I want to talk about taking everything I just talked about and formulating that into a query letter. And I do, let's just hold off on the template, because I have a template that you can use just to make it really easy. So let me go through all the components of the query letter, and I'm going to repeat some things that we just went over, and then we'll show the template, and I'll show you how you plug all of this into your query letter. And this query letter, again, you're going to be using this to send, to email to those producers and those production companies that you're going to find in IMDb Pro. I also publish a list, so you can reach out to me. I market a list of production companies with emails and contact information, and that's a list that has about 400 companies on it. That's a great list that'll get you started. All those emails are vetted. I vet them all, so you don't get any bounce backs, and that's just a list you can start with. But you can create your own list, and once you have that list, you can now send this query letter. You can email everybody on that list the query letter. And so this is what you're going to have in that query letter. The first thing, again, and this is the first thing people are going to see, right? So think about, what are they seeing? So the first thing they're going to see is the subject line, right? In the query, in the email that they're receiving, you're going to see that subject line. So that all of a sudden becomes the most important piece of real estate. It's probably more important in a sense in the email process than the log line, which is going to have almost equal importance to it. But since that's the first thing they're seeing, that's going to have the greatest amount of importance. And I could, again, do a whole hour on how to create, the most engagement with a really, sexy kind of subject line. But the only thing I'm going to tell you right now is just don't put query in the subject line, because people sometimes have a filter on their email. Like producers might have a filter on their email to filter out anything that says query. So you're going to want to be able to get around that. So just don't put query, the words query. Okay. But I try to put something in that subject line that's going to hook people, that's going to get their attention. So that's the thing you want to know about a subject line. They've done studies about people that email studies. Most people don't even open their emails. So that's going to be something another challenge you're up against. And if they open your email, most people don't read more than a few lines, maybe 5 or 6 lines down into the email. So just understand that this is how this engagement is working, and work into creating the most amount of engagement in that subject line, and then have your log line as close to the top of the letter as possible. So make sure this query letter is concise, that it's very short, because again, people aren't going to really get too far deep into it. Open with an ego booster. I think this is really effective. Dear Steve, I thought Hacksaw Ridge was an amazing movie. Okay, you've got my attention. We all have egos. Okay, some of us have really big egos. You personalize a letter like that to me, because a lot of times I'm getting dear sir type letters. But if you say dear Steve, you personalize it, that's going to get my attention. That's going to help create that engagement, because you're talking to me using my name. That's really, really strong. Very, very effective communication thing. Very effective communication style. You compliment me about something. Oh my God, I'm a sucker for that. No matter how much BS I've had thrown at me, or how much BS I'm aware of in life, it just gets me every time. And that's just how we're hardwired, I think, as human beings. So use it. It's very effective. Start out by saying, I have a movie, I have a TV series. Okay, help me wrap my head around what this is what it is that what I'm looking at. Because again, I'm like opening all these emails. There's like a lot, phones ringing. There's a lot going on. Help me focus in on what it is and take me through it, in the way I have to focus in on it. So just be like narrowing, start wide and then narrow. Okay, so I have a TV series or a film, a horror, right? Get into the genre. So I again, I wrap my head around, oh, this is what the genre is, and then hit them with the log line. Okay, real quick. So this is what it is. Okay, beginning, middle, and end, right? Hopefully that's hooking you. Okay, and then talk about, this could be a great movie for, you can talk about the directors it might be right for. It's a great movie for Steven Spielberg or some other director. Talk about there are starring roles, or so let's say if it's a starring role for one actor, it says a great starring role for this actor or this actress. There's it's an ensemble and would be right for these. Let's say it's a comedy, it's an ensemble comedy. So let's say it's like The Hangover. So you had, the three key actors in that. So it's a three-hander, or it's a two-hander, or it's a starring role for the following actors. Be great for these kinds of actors. Again, those can be types, right? So you're just explaining to a person who's coming into a cold, just so they can wrap their head around what it is, to see if it's something they might be interested in reading. Okay, because you want to get them to either respond back by asking or requesting your synopsis. So you have that's already something you already have, right? We talked about that. That's one of the tools you're going to have ready at your ready, is that 2-page synopsis that you're getting ready to send. Also, what I forgot to mention on the synopsis, always put all your contact information on all of your materials, and that includes your phone number, and that's very important. So I can't even tell you how many times I've come across something and I want to call somebody. Okay, that's unusual, I think, for someone to want to do that, but I sometimes want to do that, and there's no phone number. Like, I'm not able to do it. So that's your loss, actually. So always give a person a chance to want to reach out to you directly. Okay, I don't know if we're going to have time to get through everything. I'm going to try to talk even faster now, because there's a lot to cover. But these are the components of your query letter. Comps. We talked about comps. So you could say it's like this film, or it's like that film. And then, of course, your contact information, that's just got to be on there. Okay, so we can put up the template now for the query letter, and I'll just show you how all that plugs in. So the okay, something attention getting, without query, I meant to say. I initially used to put that on there, but then I discovered, just through doing this, querying thousands and thousands of people and having people give me feedback, I discovered this thing about the filter. So that's something that people put on. They also will put a filter on that won't accept a certain size of email. So one thing you must never do, I think I have this somewhere in my presentation, you must never send unsolicited materials. And we're going to get into all that in a minute, but yeah, never send screenplays or anything like that. All right, so this is you're going to have the Mr. and Ms. Executive, their title, that's important. People who have titles like story editor, VP of development, always put their title, because people are very into their title when they acquire one. Put their the name of their company, I just put it in all caps, and then dear Mr. or Ms. Okay, just be really formal. I'm a fan of your work, especially the film Hacksaw Ridge. Okay, there's the ego booster. I've written an epic adventure, and then try to get the again, the genre in there, which I should put in here, and then the title of it. Okay, and then the log line, right? So the log line, 2 or 3 sentences, boom, right there, describing the story. And then here we talk about the location, which I thought was maybe an interesting component. Again, I'm sort of assessing these projects and then crafting the query letter to try to see, what might be interesting, what might hook a producer's interest. I talk about the tone of it, being Braveheart, the lead role, okay, good for an actor. So, and then if this is of interest, I could forward you the summary of the script, kind regards, and then contact information. So there you have it. It shouldn't be very long. Again, people don't read very much of the letter. Those are all the components. You've got to plug all those components into that query letter, and you have a pretty kick butt letter there. Okay, so back now to the outline. Okay, so in the bottom, 6, we're on number 6, pitch deck. Okay, so again, I'm just talking about all the materials that you want to have in your arsenal for when someone wants to engage with you. They say, because here's the thing. Back in the day, people would say, yeah, send me your script. But people are not really taking the time anymore to read scripts. It's very tough to get somebody to read a script. So just keep that in mind. So again, this is a process of engagement. So so just know that. So just it's like you're reeling them in. You're reeling them in like you're on a fishing expedition. You're reeling them in. You're trying to get their attention. They respond back. Just keep throwing those things out there to reel them in. Okay. Now, once you have their attention, they might say to you, or you could suggest to them, okay, just to make it easy for them, okay, because this is what I'm doing as a producer too, because I'm also going to other producers, to attach to my projects. I'm also, going to executives at film companies, but I know they're busy, and I know they're reluctant to want to read scripts. So the other two things you can do, you could create a pitch deck, which is the easiest, thing to do, which again, can be created by using this program called Canva. So that's the program we talked about, where you create you can create your movie poster. You can also create a pitch deck in Canva. And again, I don't think Canva costs a lot of money, may even be free. And a pitch deck, some of you may know what a pitch deck is. I do have an example of a pitch deck that I created. Okay, and that is the pitch deck for, I think I sent you the one for my project, The Birth of Hacksaw Ridge, which is a TV series that I'm doing based on a book that I published about Desmond Doss and his upbringing. He's the gentleman that won the Congressional Medal of Honor on Hacksaw Ridge. So that's a limited series I'm doing. And then I created a pitch deck for a feature film project I'm doing called Icon, which is up on the screen now. And you can see, so this pitch deck, we can go through it real quick. So I just start out with the, it has pictures. The first thing in the pitch deck, again, which is the most important thing. So it works a little bit like your query letter. It's designed like a query letter, actually, right? So all these materials I'm going to talk about now all flow from everything we just discussed. So the log line, okay, concise, the first thing they see to help them wrap their head around what they're about to see next. So the log line is the first most important thing. Okay, then the next thing, now I'm trying to sort of lure them in. So we have pictures, the next page. So I'm just sort of setting up the story for them with these pictures. And I just have just a few lines, a few concise lines. You could see I'm just taking them through the first few beats of the story to try to lure them in, okay, with this pitch deck. And it's going to give them kind of the overview of how the movie is working. And you can see I've got some photos that I've taken off of the internet. And now here I have a little saying, because what I want to convey to them is that this is a story that's about something. As I always say, if you're going to tell a story, there should be a point to it, not in a overly like a heavy-handed way or like you're hitting people over the head. But the movie should really be saying something. It should be about something. It should be giving people some sort of, next level experience. Okay. Now, not every movie works. Okay, let's just hold up because we're at the synopsis now. So yeah, I'm going to include the synopsis in the pitch deck, right? Because again, people, I might say to people, hey, I have a pitch deck I can send to you, and they're going to say, yeah, send me that pitch deck. And then I'm going to sneak that synopsis in there. So then they'll read that synopsis. And then if that is all of interest and that all looks like, yeah, you know what? This is the kind of movie I want to produce. This is the kind of movie I think I can sell or set up with that production company, or this is the kind of movie I think I can interest that major director, that star in. They're going to request the script. They're going to say, okay, now the next thing is let me read the script. You get them to that point. Now it's like you have a relationship because you're going back and forth with this engagement process. You're creating a relationship, right? And that's, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. You're trying to create, because even if they don't like this particular project, you want to be able to go back to them and say, hey, you were kind enough to get back to me and request, either my synopsis or my pitch deck or whatever. I have this next screenplay, okay? Because presumably you're a writer that's going to be working on other projects. So you're going to want to create like a database of producers and people that respond back, because not everybody's going to. You're going to want to keep track, like I said before, you're going to have lists, and you're going to want to keep records of the people that do respond back, because those are the people that are the gold standard that you're going to be able to reach out to again and run things by them. Even if let's say you're thinking about writing something, you could just create the log line first, which is actually a really powerful thing to do before you actually write the screenplay. You could just create the log line. I always say that's a good thing to do before you write a screenplay, to see if it's something that makes sense for you to write, to see if it's something that you can actually create a few simple sentences about that will sell it, because marketing at the end of the day is going to be, I should really stress that this process is all driven by marketing. So here's what I mean by that. And this is why that movie poster is important. A producer's looking for a project, a studio's looking for a project that they know they can market. Okay, it's not so much, because again, they don't really know what a great screenplay is. They know a really great actor. wants to do it, and that's going to give them a lot of comfort, maybe. But they're going to need to know that they can sell the project, and they're going to need to know, so they're going to need to know a couple things. They're going to need to know that it appeals to a certain core audience, because they're not going to have money to put up billboards to, you know, the whole city. They're going to want to be able to buy ads on specific websites. And they're going to want to be doing that niche marketing, because they're going to get more bang from their buck. So just think of the end game of all this as, what's the marketing ploy? So your log line, that's going to be the thing, like in the commercial for the movie, that people are going to be able to, or people are going to have to wrap their head around that concept real quick and see all those images that are flashing in front of them, to then, that's going to hopefully create a sense of them wanting to engage and wanting to go out and see that film. And you're going to have to do that, you know, in a commercial, like a 15-second commercial spot. So think about your film in that regard, right? How do you then boil this down to 15 seconds or 30 seconds? You know, that's a lot of time. Or what is the elevator pitch? They call the elevator pitch. Okay. It's basically going to be all those components in that query letter. And if you can say that query letter real quick, like in 3 minutes, which most of the query letters I'm going to ask you to create are going to only be, maybe it's going to only take maybe a minute and a half to read it, maybe 3 minutes tops. Again, that's going to be that beginning, middle, and end, that thing with all the bells and whistles that is going to indicate, oh, this is what that thing is, and this is what the marketing is going to look like. This is what the poster is going to look like, right? Be thinking this all the way through. Okay. So this is the synopsis that you'll also have in there. We talked about what should be contained in there. In this project, this is actually, I think this pitch deck is this might even be the podcast pitch deck that I created. But for this one, I put actually an episode breakdown. So if you're doing a pitch deck for a TV series, you would have like the episode breakdowns. That's what I have in this one. That wouldn't be in a movie, a pitch deck. Okay, and the next page, yeah, so this is just the episodes. Here's our creative team. So in the pitch deck, I have a bio about myself, about the director, and so I just have that all laid out. So this is the team. So you might have a team of people that are working with you. You might have a line producer who's part of your team. You might actually have an experienced producer or a semi-experienced producer. You might have a director attached. So you're going to include all their bios in your pitch deck. Okay, so you can go to the next page. Okay, we have music in this project, so I wanted to have a page that listed the featured music, because that's an important selling point. So, again, this was very specifically designed for a certain kind of project. Pitch decks they're all going to look different, but they're going to basically have these main components, again, to show the import of what we're trying to do with the project, what it's about, okay, how it can connect, like what makes it universal. So this because that's something you really want to convey in your log line and in your materials. It's like, okay, what makes it universal? What we're going to need to sell this movie not only in the United States, but we're going to have to sell this movie, let's say, in Kazakhstan or in Georgia or in France. And so how is it going to connect with the people in those countries? So if it's a movie, about Hacksaw Ridge, which is really not an anti-gun movie or a pro or whatever anti-World War II movie, it's actually a movie about conviction, about a man who has very strong convictions, and even being faced with something as hardcore as, let's say, going into World War II, where people are shooting at you and you could be killed. His conviction to not use a gun is so strong that he winds up becoming a war hero. So that's a really powerful message. And not every movie is going to have that, but I'm asking you to sort of look to, what is that bigger message of your movie, and what makes it important, and why are people going to actually want to go see your movie, who maybe don't have the same experience you have. So look for that universal experience that everybody has. Okay, everybody understands what it's like to have strong feelings and strong convictions about things. Not everyone may be on board with the gun message or whatever, but but they're going to connect to the much bigger message. So be looking for that in your project, because that's going to help you sell it. Okay. And that, again, that's going to dictate the marketing, and that's going to be the trigger that's going to make people want to go see it. So, just a great screenplay in and of itself, like quality writing, that's just at the end of the day not going to that's just not going to raise the financing. Okay. You can get people interested in that project. You can even have people offer to option that screenplay. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if it doesn't have all of these components, all right, you're just not going to raise the financing to produce it. So that's why I'm getting into everything. All right. This isn't just a course on how to option your screenplay. It's a course on how to raise the financing. So optioning your screenplay, which we're going to talk about, is one part of that process. But you're going to need to, your project's going to need to have the heft to be able to move through all the different pieces. And optioning is just the first thing. Setting it up at a studio or a streamer might be the next thing. Attaching talent, it might be then the next thing. And then you might actually get the full financing at that point. And that's usually how it happens. I open by saying, once that A-list director or A-list piece of cast comes on, even if you have a project, let's say at Netflix, okay, so the project's fully financed, but they may not give it the quote unquote green light until they have an A-list actor who says yes to it, and they'll need the director before that, because actors won't generally agree to star in a film unless they know who the director is. So understand too, that's sort of like the steps of the process. Because a lot of people will say, hey, I've got this, like, this is my BS meter. This is how it works. So people will say to me, hey, I have this actor attached, and I'll say, who's your director? And if they don't have a director, I know that actor may be interested, but that's not a hard attachment, because the actor's always going to be interested subject to who's directing it. That's how actors make their decisions. Anyway, just again, another small point that I probably shouldn't be getting into. But all right, now let's try to move faster here. Okay, so the next thing, we're not quite to this yet, but the next thing was promo reel. A promo reel is just another level of pitch deck, and it's going to have the same components. And I have included the link to a promo reel that I produced called Fate, and you will see how I crafted that promo reel, and you'll see that all of the things that I'm talking about are basically in this promo reel. The difference with this promo reel is I have a director attached, so there's a testimonial. There are testimonials in the promo reel, for the director, because I'm also trying to sell the project and the director who's attached to the project. So that's just another thing that's specifically designed from this particular promo reel. And then when people watch the materials, they'll see everything links up. It all connects. Okay, so it's all going to connect. Okay, so now the next thing. Let's get into the legal aspects. We're just going to back up a little bit. So this is something that you're gonna encounter, and maybe you've already encountered this. So approaching studios, production companies, agents, managers, the first thing a lot of people will tell you is that they do not accept unsolicited materials. Now, I said this a couple minutes ago. I'm going to say it again. You should never send screenplays, synopses, pitch decks, any materials, any written materials, any materials at all, with the exception of your query letter only. Okay, so a query letter you may send. Now, people also say they don't accept query letters, but forget all that. They're going to say they don't accept anything. I mean, that's just, producers just do this, okay, because otherwise they're going to get inundated with thousands of query letters. Now, I recently met a producer who told me that he does that to try to weed out the people that he just doesn't think believe in their project. Okay, so this is what you should know. So as long as you're not crossing the line and you're not sending unsolicited materials, you are well within your rights, in my opinion, to query a producer or a production company or an executive or a star, because we're going to talk about movie stars have production companies as well that you can approach. But as long as you're not sending them material, you can query them. That's fair game. The legality of it is, um, the legality of it is, uh, people can, you cannot protect an idea. So if you tell someone your idea, so this is something you should be aware of. If you email somebody a great idea, they can steal your idea. Okay, now that's not generally what producers are looking to do. Producers are looking for people who have great ideas and who can execute those ideas as writers, because producers just don't have time to start stealing things and hiring. That just takes that's a lot of time and energy. And if someone decides to sue you, that just stops a project dead in its tracks, because no one's going to touch a project with a legal cloud on it. Okay, so producers are not, that's just not what they're looking to do. They don't need those headaches. So so you can send them your log line, but be sure that if that's a great idea. Okay, let's presume that's a great idea. But that idea is already written. So you can't protect the idea, but you can protect the written expression of the idea, which means you can copyright a screenplay, you can copyright and protect a synopsis. All right, you can protect the specific expression of your idea. All right, so you want to do that before you send any materials out. Make sure that you have that copyright symbol. Okay, put that copyright symbol on all your materials. You don't even need to officially register or copyright your material, although you should do that too. If you just put the copyright symbol, it automatically protects your work under the copyright laws of the United States. And I think there is international copyright law that abides by too as well. Not a legal expert in that, but I think you can be you're pretty safe in that regard. So to make sure you put that copyright symbol on there, let me try to stick to the outline here, so I'm not, just make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, I just say if someone publishes their email on IMDb Pro, it's fair game. And the list that I publish, there are no private emails on that list. I have everybody's private email, but I do not publish anyone's private email. I would never do that unless they've given me the permission to do that. And you should never do that either. And it's very unprofessional. So just don't be unprofessional. You can email assistants, and you can ask the assistants for their email and send them your email, and that email will then get to the assistant, who will read it. And a lot of times the principal, like the agent or the manager or the executive, is also being CC'd on all those emails, so they will see your letter. So that's all you need to do. Usually in their own personal or private emails, they're so filled with emails, they usually need an assistant to sort of filter everything that's coming in. So you're fine to send it to an assistant, which is usually a person that you can talk to, create engagement with, and that assistant is like the gatekeeper, and they'll read scripts, and they're looking to become producers too. So they're like great people to like ask out for drinks, or create a relationship with, because that's what you want to do. Create a relationship, create engagement with the people that are like the gate guards or the gatekeepers, who, again, initially their instinct is going to want to keep you out. They're going to tell you they don't accept unsolicited materials or unsolicited submissions, blah, blah, blah. But you are well within your rights to submit a query letter and take your chances. You may never hear back, but you got to take your shots. Okay. Again, never send unsolicited materials or screenplays. Ideas, we covered that, not protectable. Only the expression of an idea is protectable. I gave you the example of a producer who I know who just uses that to test people to see if they believe in their work. I always say, what's the worst thing that can happen? There's no such thing as a bad submission, like there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? You're getting your work out there, you're exposing your work. That's what you have to do. You have to take your shots. Copyright and register your material, we talked about. Copyright symbols internationally recognized. Okay, on to the next thing here. All right, so you're going to do this using an email. I've already gone over the query letter and all the components that for that. You can do a phone call. Phone calling is next level, right? So the first easiest thing you can do is just email somebody. Thank God for emails these days. Back in the day, you had to like mail the query, which you can still do. And I still think mailing is effective because people do get their mail and they do open their mail, and mail, getting a query letter via the mail, they only get maybe 1 or 2 of those, if that. So that's going to make your query letter stand out. So that's just another approach that I employ that might get good results. Again, I'm just not going to get into all the approaches here, but I'd throw that one out. The other approach is calling, phone calling. Not going to get into all the ins and outs of that. I'll just throw a few quick things out. Call early in the morning because that's when the assistant has time maybe to talk to you or whatever. But don't call like at 10 o'clock. That's usually when they're rolling phone calls with their boss. So they're just going to want to get you off the phone really quick. Call later at night, like 7 p.m. That's when they're in the office wrapping up all their day's work. So they're going to be more, they're going to be more open to talking to you, giving you their email, whatever, paying attention to whatever it is that you have to say. Call over lunch. Calling during lunch is another good time to call, but don't just try to avoid the busy times. One little trick when you this is really effective when I get people on the phone or when I'm phone calling, I'll say to them, hey, this is Steve. I'll tell them who I am, because it's just very, very mysterious when you go, hey, who's this, or who are you? They're just like, well, who are you? It just makes people really defensive. But if you introduce yourself, that's just like a warm up. Hi, this is Steve Longi. What's your name? Ask them for their name, and then when they tell you their name, say, oh, this is Lisa. Then use their name back at them. Say, Lisa, do you have? I'm sorry, I know you're busy. Do you have a second? Ask their permission. That is a really powerful thing to do that gets people immediately on your side, because it lets them know that you understand that they're really busy and that they're getting a lot of phone calls and they're getting pitched a lot of things, but that you're someone that understands that and is willing to respect that and make it easier on them. And again, when I say easier on them, by saying, listen, I have like a 5-sentence query letter. Can I just shoot that over to you? Or, hey, I have a pitch deck, that you can take a look at. Or, hey, I've got a 2-minute promo reel you could easily take a look at. These are things that allow them to get you off the phone, because that's kind of what they're trying to do, without a lot of commitment, right? So they'll say, oh yeah, send the pitch deck. I'll take a look at it when I get a second, right? It's just some real easy, actionable thing that you can get them to do that then starts creating that engagement. Okay, so you do that. Mailing, you could try that. It's an old school ploy, but I think it's effective sometimes. The follow-up, like if someone requests something, follow up every like 2 weeks, okay, or even 3 weeks these days. Just give people a lot of room, a lot of breathing room, or ask them, hey, when should I follow up on this? Okay, just say, hey, what time frame? How much time you need to read this? Okay, always be polite, always be professional, always be respectful of the fact that they just don't have a lot of time and energy. All right, this is going to help get your film financed, because you're going to create this engagement. And they're going to want to help you. They're going to want to help you get it financed. They're going to want to help you set it up, help you attach talent, all those things. All right, we can go to the next one. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I forget who said that. I think it was either Wayne Gretzky or Mark Cuban. But this is the thing about life. Look, the thing about what we're doing here is this. And people come to me and they say, hey, Steve, read my screenplay and tell me if it's any good. Well, if it's good to me, like some things may be good to me, but some things may not be good for other people. So what does that mean? It means that what we're doing here is very subjective, right? So again, what I said before is not everybody actually knows what a good screenplay is. And even if they know what a good screenplay is, it may just not be a screenplay they want to produce. Okay, so that's very important, because people think like if they have a great screenplay and a producer passes on it, they may start to surmise the screenplay is not very good. But you can't think that way. So because what I'm trying to do with this is I'm trying to give you the mental capacity, the mental ability, the mental frame to go through this process and not be discouraged, to go through this process and actually at the end of the day get your movie financed, because you weren't discouraged, or you weren't stopped because you didn't have the proper materials or the proper presentation, or you weren't presenting it in a way that allowed people to understand and see what your vision is. Okay, so So that's the thing. You just got to take your shots, all right, and let people decide for themselves whether. And again, don't get too caught. Hide like a rhinoceros. The reason why you're that way is because you're not taking it personally, because it's not personal. They're not saying it's not good. They're basically just saying, I don't see the vision, or it's not something for me to produce, or it's just not ready in terms of, how it's written or whatever. It just needs more development. Okay, that may be a question of quality, but again, that is very subjective. Okay, but just don't take it personally, because what some people, I've gone out with movies, Hacksaw Ridge included, that people they pass on Hacksaw Ridge, even knowing what a great storyline it is and potentially what a great movie that can be. They just didn't have the vision for it, and I can't explain it myself, because I hear that story, I see that story, and I go, that's like 6 Academy Awards or whatever. And I can tell you there are a lot of people didn't see it. But if I allowed that to discourage me, I would have never gotten the movie made. So you have to believe in your project. You have to come in with the frame that you're bringing somebody something great, and you have to take your shots. Okay. Now, we talked about agents and managers, but of course I said that the way that I believe in the most is to go to producers, because producers are the ones that understand this process. They're the ones that know how to make movies. Even agents and managers don't really know how to make movies. They are in the client representation business, not in the producing business. Okay. And yeah, they might get producer credits, but the person that understands how to make a movie is the producer with the Producers Guild mark. So when you're watching a movie and you'll see a lot of producer credits, but when you see the producer credit that has the PGA mark next to it, that's the creative producer. That's the person who's like me, who finds the material, shepherds that project all the way from the beginning until the end. And they are the people, and those people who have those production companies hire the people that know how to make movies. And those are the people that are going to be able to help you at the screenplay level stage. So those are the people you're going to have to approach. Okay, I provided a list. This is a very valuable list. It's a little outdated, but that's neither here nor there. It doesn't really matter, because most of these companies exist. But what this list is, this is a list of the top companies in town that have first look deals, meaning relationships with studios and streaming companies that, this is the list here, that, so here's Amazon. So these companies have a relationship with Amazon of like a first look deal, where if they like your screenplay, they can take it to Amazon, where they already have this pre-existing relationship, and Amazon will look at it and either acquire it, meaning option that script, or buy that script, and then want to make the movie. So not every producer has a first look deal. I do not have a first look deal. But a lot of producers who've been around a lot longer than me, who have a long list of really big money-making films, have these deals at studios. These used to be more prevalent. These days, most of these deals are with financing entities, because studios just didn't have a lot of luck having first look deals with producers, because it takes a while for a producer to actually make a movie with that studio. So they just, without getting into that, they just didn't see the value of it too much. But they do see the value in having these relationships with actors and directors, because then they acquire screenplays that these actors and directors attach themselves to. And like I said before, that's the thing that triggers financing, is when you have a huge element attaching themselves to a piece of material. But as you can see, this list, which I also publish, I also market this list along with the other contact list, shows you which companies that you should be trying to reach. Now, a lot of these companies are not going to be reachable. It's just how it is. They're just so high end that it's going to be, they won't list emails or phone numbers or anything like that. But they might list addresses, and you can mail a query letter. And I have found a lot of these companies email contacts, and you can, some of them have phone numbers, so you can call them, you can get emails, the assistance email as I recommended. So if you see an executive, a VP of development, and the VP of development doesn't have any contact information, no email on IMDb Pro, but there's a phone number to the company. You call the company, you ask for that person's office, you talk to that assistant in the way I explained, and you ask for that assistant's email, because you say to that assistant, I'm calling to talk to the executive. I have a project I want to talk to them about. Of course, I know they don't know me, so I want to send you an email as to why I'm calling, and that email will be your query letter. And then you keep following up with that query letter. And then you get that assistant's name, and you call back and you talk to that assistant. Did he see my query letter? Did he like the query letter? Does he not want to read the query letter? You just be very professional, and you just ask very politely. You just keep following up, and you just be very professional and very polite, and you just be tenacious, and you give them enough time, 2 to 3 weeks. Each time you keep checking, circling around back, and you let them know that you're not going away. And if you watch the movie Wall Street, I always use this example. This is Bud Fox, which is Charlie Sheen. He's trying to get the attention of Gordon Gekko, and Gordon Gekko won't give him any attention, but he keeps trying. He finds out Gordon Gekko's birthday. Okay. And then on Gordon Gekko's birthday, he finds out what Gordon Gekko's into. He likes cigars, and he likes, I forget, a certain bottle of wine. And he buys these cigars. He gets these, which are hard to find. He tracks down these cigars. He gets this certain bottle of wine. And then he shows up at the guy's office, which I don't recommend doing these days because that's a security risk. And that could freak people out, actually. But when Wall Street was made, we didn't have those issues so much. But you understand where I'm going. They're trying to personalize that interaction. They're trying to create this engagement, trying to get the person's attention. And ultimately, Gordon Gekko gets back to Bud Fox, and he gives him his chance. He says, okay, what do you got? Pitch me. Like, now he's like, all right, now you got my attention. Give me that log line. Show me this thing that you got that you're telling me is so great, right? Watch that movie. See how that works. That's the attitude of executives. That's the process. Be ready for that moment. Like, if you call, like, I've had so many people call me over the years, hi, Steve, they get me on the phone, but they are never expecting to get me on the phone, because people come into this process with this, like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. And they're never going to take my call. They're never going to, right? They come in with a very negative mind frame. That's why I say, work on your mind frame before you start, right? Don't come into it, but you might get somebody on the phone. I call people all the time, and I don't expect them to get them on the phone, but I'm ready. If they do get on the phone, I'm ready, like nobody's business. And I've gotten some amazing people pick up the phone, because I call weird hours, and I do all kinds of different things. And sometimes the principal of the office will pick up the phone, and you'll get them on the phone. They won't have a lot of time. You'll say, who's this? Oh, this is, Joe so-and-so, who I'm actually trying to reach. Oh, fantastic. You have a minute? I just want to say, I just want to take 1 minute, like, let them know you're not going to waste their time. Let them know you're not going to sit there and pitch endlessly. But I've had people call me, and I will say to them, when they don't have any idea they're going to get me on the phone, I say, all right, pitch me your project. Silence. They're just completely flustered. They don't have their pitch ready. They can't give me the elevator pitch. They can't even tell me what that query letter has to say, which is basically all you have to do. Say, listen, it's this, this, and this. It's great for this actor. It has this kind of tone, all these things. And then I might say, you know what, that sounds interesting. Well, let me tell you more about it, and then I'll actually pitch the movie to them, in a way that's kind of teasing it. So they'll want to, so I'll give them maybe the first 2 acts, and I'll say, listen, is that interesting to you? Because I don't want to blow the ending for you. Because, like, in this movie Fate, when you watch the Fate reel, that movie has a surprise ending that the reel doesn't tell you about it at all. So it's about a guy who gets, injured in a really devastating accident. He loses his leg, and he goes to this mysterious place to rehab. But what you find out at the end of the movie is he got killed in the accident. He actually died, and the place where he went to rehab was purgatory. So it's got this surprise twist ending, but I don't give you that in the promo reel. I just give you enough in the promo reel to want to engage you, want to hook your interest, and I leave the ending as a surprise. So that's just a way to sort of be really effective in the way you're pitching. But you got to be ready. If you call somebody, or somebody calls you, or you run into somebody, at a party or something, you got to be ready to pitch that greatest story ever told, right? Because that's going to get them wanting to read the script, or wanting to look at your materials, and again, wanting to write a check maybe,
or wanting to call their actor that they have a relationship with to attach themselves. And once they do that, you're getting financing for your film. Bradley Cooper says he wants to make your movie. Guess what? That film's probably going to get financed, unless it's some really obscure like art house or personal, project or passion project. Yeah, they're gonna write a check for Bradley Cooper. Rest assured. And I'm sure you see a lot of bad movies, because there's a lot of bad movies out there. That maybe have like Bruce Willis has a habit of, because of a lot of extenuating circumstances. Unfortunately, as he has a debilitating condition, but Bruce Willis signed on to a lot of movies for a paycheck. I will say that that were not very good. And they got made literally because his name is attached, not because the movie's any good, but literally because his name is attached, and they know his name will sell tickets, or they'll be able to make deals in the foreign markets, just because he's attached to a movie, because people know who he is and they'll just see the movie. That's sort of the business side of the business, but on the creative side of the business, it works similarly. So that's going to be the key, is attaching some major element. Okay, so yeah, now the third way, so we talked about going out to producers, going out to production companies, and then of course the third way is finding like an angel investor. Now this is a more difficult way, because it's kind of unstructured, right? So if you're going through producers or production companies, they already have like an infrastructure for making movies, right? They have a process, they have a team of people, they have all the relationships, they have all the knowledge, all right? But if you're going through, let's say, somebody who has just independent financing, someone who wants to finance a film independently, all right, or someone who wants to do it for an investment, which is not a good reason to finance in films, because it's a very high risk, high reward type of proposition. And when you're talking to investors, you always want to let them know this is high risk but high reward. Okay. And most investors will know this already. All right. And you want to be savvy investors, obviously already know this. And you don't want to be over promising, but then under delivering. So that's another thing you don't want to do with an investor. There's certain ways you want to speak to a private investor. So I'm going to try to see if we can talk about some of those approaches and how that works. Okay, but the first thing that you want to know is that investors. Well, before I get into that, let's just talk about back before they changed, the Security and Exchange Commission, which is the SEC here in the United States, had rules about how many investors and what types of investors you were allowed to bring on board the financing of the film. So it used to be that you had to have what they call accredited investors. Accredited investors are individuals that can show that they have $1 million liquid money, like in cash or a bank account. All right. It has to be liquid, in a liquid investment, not in assets. Now, the Securities and Exchange Commission has now changed those rules. And this is where crowdfunding, this is why crowdfunding has actually come into its own, because of this rule change, where now you don't need only accredited financiers. Now anybody can invest in a movie. They can put $10 in a movie, $100 into a movie, or $1 million into a movie. And this is it can be done through crowdfunding platforms. Again, this is like a whole nother course. I won't get into it, but of these crowdfunding platforms, you kind of know how they work. And what I would say is the materials that we just discussed, creating all those materials are what you're going to use, or what you're going to need to create a crowdfunding profile. So you're going to need all that stuff. Now, where do you find these individuals? That is the tricky thing. Now, a lot of, I've worked with individuals who actually, I made a movie with somebody who had the money themselves. So they had the budget of the film. It wasn't a huge budget, but and it wasn't going to be all the money they had in the bank, but it was just going to be a portion of it. They wanted to make a movie, but they were a filmmaker, and so this made sense for them. But with film investment, I always say there should be a reason why you're investing in film. Okay, so if you're a writer, producer, or director, that's going to make the most sense because this is going to be your career. So if you have money to invest in your career, that makes sense. If you're someone who wants to become somebody like a producer, writer, director, and you're doing it, that's good too. If you're just doing it for the glamour of it, or just because you want to call yourself a producer and you like that, or if you just like being part of the creative process, all that's fine as well. But just understand that it's very high risk, high reward type of thing, and you're not going to invest all your money, and you're not investing only because you think it's a great investment opportunity. Okay, have other reasons why you're getting involved in it, and making a lot of money might actually happen. Certainly, there are many movies that have returned lots and lots of money for their investors, but those films were designed a certain way, created in a certain way. Okay, and we'll get into that. Like, just real quick, like the budget of the film was not very high, so maybe it was a horror film, a one location horror film that maybe cost $100,000 to make, like a Blair Witch Project, and winds up making millions and millions of dollars all over the world. That's going to return, that literally can return millions of dollars to your investors. If you make a movie that costs $50 million, okay, and then the other thing you have to consider is it's going to cost $50 million. That's literally what it might cost to market. Okay, marketing and publicity costs a lot of money, and that's going to factor into the profit. And we're going to talk about that in a sec, because that formula is going to be important for your investor. That movie is going to be harder to sell to an investor. That movie is probably not going to return a lot of money because you have to make so much more money to break even. Zach, but again, just avoid over promising and under delivering. And but it is possible in this high risk, high reward scenario to make a lot of money. Okay, but when you're approaching independent financiers, you're going to need a business plan. So let's get through this, what a business plan is going to look like. Again, the business plan is going to have almost the same components as your pitch deck. Okay, it's going to have the same things. So that's why I started with the pitch decks and all that. Now we get to the business plan for the more indie approach. Okay, so this is sort of like that third thing. All right, first thing would be streamers, studios. Second thing would be producers, production companies. The third thing would be finding an angel investor. Now, as part of your business plan, so you have an investor, he says he wants to invest in your movie, but okay, I don't know anything about it. So he's got a million questions. So, all right, let's say he has an attorney that vets projects for him. You could say to the attorney, well, I have a business plan. And a business plan could also, your promo reel or your pitch deck could also incorporate aspects of a business plan. The promo reel and pitch deck that I used as examples don't necessarily address, they were more for the creative person, and not so much for a financial person. But we're going to briefly touch upon what things should maybe be in the presentation for a financial person. All right, but one thing would be that your script, right? So you're going to send them the screenplay in addition to your synopsis. You're going to send them a packet of materials, but this business plan is going to be like a packet of materials, and along with that packet, the screenplay is going to be attached to that packet. All right, so that's one thing. That screenplay, your contact information should be on the cover. It should obviously be professionally formatted. It should be registered with the Writers Guild of America, which is easy to do. The copyright symbol should be on the cover printed, your phone number, and it should also be registered with the US Copyright Office, easy to do. Your phone number, your email, your ad, all that should be on the cover. So it's easy to find you, easy to track back to you. Okay, that's one thing. Now, the next thing's a little harder. That's the budget. A budget is not something everybody's going to be able to have, because a true budget, what they call a real budget, and this is again how I know when people don't know what they're doing or are BSing me. If they say they have a budget, but again, they don't have a director, I know it's not a real budget, because the budget has to be done alongside the director who's making the movie with a line producer who understands how to physically make the movie. In other words, he knows what it's going to cost for the location, what it's going to cost to rent the trailers, rent the equipment. So those are things I don't know as well, because I'm more of a creative producer. So I'm hiring the line producer to make a budget, and I have to pay a line producer to do the budget, and that will cost a decent amount of money. That's a pretty decent spend. So you're not really going to be doing that unless you have the financing or the resources to do that, or you're ready to do that, meaning you're really serious, like you have some of the financing in the bank already, or you have someone who's willing to finance of this, because you could crowdfund the development, what they call the development of the film, which then might help finance paying for a line producer to do a budget. But if that with the director who's making the movie, so he can explain to the line producer, this explosion, we're going to do that for real, or that's just going to be a special effect. So then the line producer knows, okay, if that's going to be a special effect, it's going to cost this. And if in this explosion, it's going to cost this other amount, right? So you can have a budget being done without a director, which then I know as a producer, if someone comes at me, they're just ballparking it, which can be accurate, but I just know that they're going to need a director to come on board to sort of say, well, we're going to do this a little differently. So that could raise that budget or lower that budget. And I'm always going to be looking for ways to lower that budget. So when I look at the budget, and I'm going to be looking at what they call the top sheet. So in your business plan, sometimes you don't include the full budget. You might include the first 2 pages, which is what they refer to as the top sheet. And the top sheet will have a summary of the categories. So we'll have a summary of what they call the above the line, which is like the actors, the producers, what they get paid, and the screenplay, what that costs. And those are what they call above the line costs, fees for producers. And then the below the line costs, which is what it costs for everything else, like the set building and post-production and like things like that. So that'll be part of like your below the line. Sometimes post-production is a separate category, but you'll have like these 3 categories, and there'll be a summary of what each of them costs. And then there'll be an end summary of what the full movie costs. So it's just like an overview of everything. And as part of that overview, it'll include also your, like if you're shooting in a tax credit state, it'll have like what the tax credit is, and it'll subtract against what the budget is, and then it'll give you like the full budget after the tax credit. So someone will know what the movie's going to cost ultimately, because tax credits will obviously bring down the cost of a film. If you get money back from a tax credit state, that's going to go against the budget, and then you're going to need less money to make the movie, presumably. Okay. So you might include a budget and a top sheet in there. You're going to have your cast list in there. You're going to have your directors list in there. Your log line, of course, is going to be the very first thing, just like I showed you in my pitch deck. Synopsis is going to be included there. Comps going to be included in the business plan. So you can see it's all basically the same things that you're conveying to an investor, with a couple other things. Okay, the next one. Okay, the business plan is basically going to be a formula. A formula of the deal that makes the best sense. So it's going to be when you're presenting your project, the thing that's going to trigger the financing, okay, is is that what it is you're presenting kind of adds up, kind of makes sense, like overall, right? So if you're presenting like a one location, low budget horror film, but you need Bradley Cooper to star in that and you're going to make it for $2 million, yeah, probably not going to get Bradley Cooper, on board that project, right? That's where like it's just probably not going to be realistic. So the components of that thing you're showing them, meaning what kind of movie is it? What genre of the movie is it? What level of the movie? What's the budget? Is it a theatrical? Is it the kind of movie that deserves the theatrical, which is become a way more relevant question these days than ever before? Is it the kind of movie that can be programmed on a streamer? Like, what is it exactly? Because it's to people looking at it's kind of a piece of business, right? So you take that thing as a whole, does it all add up? Does it all make sense? Right? Like, do you have, if it's a very dark, dramatic film, but you have a comedic actor who's never done dark or dramatic, that might actually be a selling point, by the way. Or people might see that as, that's risky. That actor's never done anything like that, right? Maybe an A-list actor, but so you see what I'm saying? It's like all the little components have to like add up to something that makes sense to trigger somebody to come in with this financing. They have to say, wow, that makes perfect sense to us. Like, yeah, it's Hacksaw Ridge. It's a great story. It's a great lead role for an actor. It's not too expensive. It's a theatrical release. It's like all these, it checks all the boxes, right? It checks all the boxes. It's like, oh, you can shoot it in a tax credit state. That's going to give you back 30%. So we don't have to spend 10 million. We only spend 7 million on it, right? It's all these things are going to add up in a person's mind, in a financier's mind, in an executive's mind. Does it all sort of add up and make sense? And does it all add up and make sense to, you know what? This project's viable. Like, it's not too much money. It'll attract great talent. It can have a theatrical release. It'll definitely attract big production companies and stars and talent and directors. It's this project I want to spend time and energy pursuing because it's viable, right? And that's what you want to convince a producer of. It's going to be worth their time and energy to want to pursue. All right. And then this is more of an accounting thing or a business thing, just real quick, because I think it's good advice, but it's not necessary to form an LLC. A lot of people will do this like right out of the gate when embarking on, trying to make a movie, or they'll set up an LLC, which is a good thing to do, is a proper thing to do, is the right thing to do when you're making an independent film, but requires a lot of paperwork, will cost you some money, not a lot of money necessarily. Again, I could do a full hour on this. There are a lot of things involved with creating LLCs, but the two things that you got to know are they will cost money. So presumably you have some money put aside for this. If you're serious about doing this, that's why I started out by saying have like a little budget. And then you do have to file a tax return on an LLC, which will cost about $800 a year. If you're not taking money into the LLC, which you won't be until your movie's financed or until your script's optioned or something like that happens. And a lot of times if that happens, you're not going to be forming the company. The person who's producing it will be forming the company. So an LLC will only be a financial structure you'll be using if you are the one raising the capital yourself. So don't do that until you have a financier who's serious about it. And then you could say, okay, if you're serious about this, I need you to put the money in escrow. We're going to form an LLC, which they should be paying for because it's going to help protect them. It's going to be part of the financial structure. It's going to prove to you that they're serious, right? It shows them that you're serious because you know to do this. It's going to be a financial entity that they are going to become an owner of because that's what an LLC is. It's a limited liability corporation where you will have people who are a part of it. So for example, you will transfer, like you have the investor, you will transfer, he will option your screenplay, even if it's for no money, or let's say it's for $1, you will transfer that agreement, that option agreement into the LLC. So everybody is a part of it. Everybody is participating in ultimately what happens with that screenplay. It gets turned into a movie. You raise that financing, that LLC all of a sudden starts taking in money. You start selling the film, that LLC will start taking in revenue. Okay, then it's distributed amongst the participants, the profit participants of the LLC. Looks like we missed a section in the business plan. So here's the other thing. So after the comps, under business plan, there were a couple things right down there that I didn't get to. So maybe I just blew past those things. So I'll do these really quick. So in the business plan, and as part of that formula, the other thing that you can show is like let's say you're shooting in Canada. This is valuable information. You can show that like right now the dollar is really strong in Canada, and you could say, hey, we're shooting in Canada, and right now because the dollar gets like $1 25% more in Canada, the budget is actually 25% less because we're shooting in Canada, just because of the dollar conversion. And then the other thing is, if you're using a Canadian director, Canadian writer, Canadian producer, Canada has a point system, so does the UK, and so does Australia. So this is another way to raise financing by attaching Canadian content, meaning Canadian producers, Canadian writers, or British writers, British producers, British actors, British screenwriters. They have a points program that if you have a certain number of those people attached, they will actually give you money. Canada will give you money. Britain will give you money. They don't really do that here in the States. I think you can get a grant, but that's generally not done here in the States. But in Canada, in Europe, you can raise money that way. That's like another really effective way to raise money, is by having foreign talent attached. So that's something I wanted to be sure to mention. Dollar conversions I mentioned. Product placement is another thing. Now, this is a little dicey, but if you do have a movie that truly does showcase a product, you can approach that company and see if they'd be willing to give you some money. Now, they probably won't give you millions of dollars if you don't have like a huge development deal, or if there's a studio, if the studio is not attached or something. Or you might be able to get a letter of intent from them that says, if you do set it up with a studio, or if you do get certain stars attached or whatever, that they will come in and give you what they call bankable paper that you can take to a bank and raise financing on, or that a studio or that a production company can take to a bank and raise financing with. So that's another option if you have some good product placement, but that generally is dicier. And then just getting into investors. So this is the thing that I don't have in the pitch deck, but with investors, you're going to want to show you're going to want to show how they can make their money back, which is called their return on investment. And basically all that really is we call this a waterfall. So if they put in 100% of the money, what happens is, so they put in 100% of the money. So the way that's looked at as 100 points on the back end of a movie. And again, this gets a little complicated, but here's kind of what we're talking about. The investor then gets 50 of those points on the back end of the movie. So the investor gets all the movie's making money. So the entire budget comes back to the investor plus, let's say, 20%, because that's how the investor's making their money. They're going to make 20% on their investment up front. So when the money comes back, they get paid the 20%. Okay. Now, once they're paid back the full amount of money they put in, plus the 20%, which is their investment, now they're entitled to 50 points of 100% of the back end of the film, which now is all of the profit of the film. So that means we took all the costs to make, to market, to produce the film have now been all paid back, and all the costs to borrow that money. So whatever the investor needed to make, whatever the interest costs are, that's all been paid back. Okay. Even the movie theaters that you showed the movie in, they've been paid back. They've been paid. They get half of the door. So when you see a movie makes $100 million, only $50 million is coming back to the investors. The movie theaters got the other 50 million. Now, out of the 50 million that's coming back, the investor has 50% of that 50 million. After everything's been paid back, now we have the profit, which is 100%. So out of 100% of that profit, the investor gets 50 profit points. The filmmaker, the actors, everybody that was creatively involved with the film, they get 50 points. But it's up to the producer to distribute those points. Now, when you're making a deal with an actor, you may offer them those points that may be part of the bargaining. You say, well, you're not getting paid much up front. The movie's only going to be $1 million. So there's probably going to be profit, because after we sell it and we get all our money back, if it's Blair Witch, those 5 points, that I'm offering you could be worth $1 million. And this has happened on independent movies. There have been movies that have been made for not a lot of money where actors didn't take any upfront. They took back end points and they made millions of dollars. That has actually happened a number of times. It doesn't happen a lot of times. That happens, and agents and actors are aware of it. So they will make these deals. I know I'm getting a little deeper into it. Can we take a 2-minute break and then come back for questions?
Yeah, go ahead and turn off your camera then. Let me talk to people. Let me actually put my 2 cents into this. This was definitely in-depth information on how to approach investors, where to look for investors. I can also add from my own experience that, when you are a foreign filmmaker, you should also look at well, Steve said, you can raise capital in countries like Canada, in England, for example, which, by the way, we're going to have another excellent masterclass. Everyone, please take a look at the website, hollywoodfilmacademy.com. We're going to have a masterclass with Robert Bell, another dear friend. Robert is going to talk about film finance and agreements, and he's going to actually talk about this additional ways of financing, and also in depth on where to look for those financing. But I also wanted to address the product placements that Steve mentioned, and sometimes different foreign countries, different like, for example, in Kazakhstan, I was able to lend tons of product placement, and the way that they basically contributed to my budget wasn't the hard cash. It was, for example, like free locations in exchange for showcasing their product, or catering in exchange for presenting their restaurant somewhere in the movie, etc., etc. So you can absolutely look at it creatively that way. And also to the points that countries offer as far as the financing, I want to, which is Steve talked about just now, I wanted to point out.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve, you there? So I wanted to point out that, for example, Georgia also has a point program, but it works slightly differently. It's just because Georgia, the country Georgia, not the state, Georgia has 20% tax incentives, but the points work where if you work with those points, you can get up to 5% more in tax incentives, which is, by the way, also a very important way of financing your movies. So Steve,
Yes.
thank you very much for this incredible information that you gave us today. And what I wanted to kind of like, for a few minutes, because we have very little time left.
I know. I'm sorry. I know it's a lot of information.
Yeah, that's fine. By the way, everyone, make sure to register to the website, hollywoodfilmacademy.com has a way for you guys to register. So that way we can send you all the materials that Steve had provided today, that we were, basically sharing on the screen. So Steve, so many of our viewers and participants are filmmakers from foreign countries. So sometimes there is a mental block, meaning like, oh, how do we use this approach that Steve Longi just talked about when we're in foreign countries? Some of them, usually younger generations, don't have that mental block because they were exposed to the West, they traveled to the West more often maybe, and they speak the language and studied probably, but what normally they do, and I know that from my own experience, is they just raise hard cash, they raise private money. What would you encourage them to do? Let's say they raised a certain amount of money. Could they then take that money and make it as the first money in, and then maybe structure their financing, further? Could you talk about it a little?
Yeah, I think, if you have money, the thing is this is how it all, this is what it all boils down to. I'll just give it to you really quick. Again, attaching actors. Okay. So it's as simple as that. Now, of course, that's not easy. So how do you do that? Okay. So the home run is if you have money, let's say you have all the money to make the movie. Now, you would need to have all that money in an escrow account. So that's an interest-bearing account at a bank that is specifically earmarked to make a movie. Okay. You have that. You have an actor you want to make an offer to, because at some point you need to make offers to actors, no matter who you are. If you're Universal Studios, you can make an offer to an actor. Or if you're just somebody out in the street, you can make a financial offer to an actor. Nothing stops you. But you have to be able to have that money. Now, here's what agents, just to get you out, to put you in the mindset of an agent, because you have to understand what you're up against, right? Let's say that screenplay is, let's say they like the screenplay and it's a makeable movie, it's a commercial film, but it's not set up with a studio. It's just an individual on the street who says, hey, I want your actor to be in this. The agent's going to want you to make what they call a pay or play offer. A pay or play offer means you're either going to hire that actor and make the movie, or if you don't make the movie, you're going to have to pay that actor. And nobody wants that to happen. They all want to know that if they make a pay or play offer, and nobody makes a pay or play offer unless they know they're going to make the movie. And that's a hard thing to know sometimes. So if you're an independent producer, maybe because you've been with the project, you have other interested parties, you're pulling all these pieces together, right? And let's say you have a little bit of money. So you have this little bit of money. You might use that money. You might want to put that money in a bank and then use that money to back an offer to an actor to say, hey, I know we don't have the full financing, but you could say, I've got their salary already in the bank earmarked to pay them to make this movie, to show that you have the wherewithal. Because agents need to know that you have, that you can come up with this money, right? Because most people cannot come up with millions of dollars. So and they're not going to trust you that you can come up with it. They're going to need to see verifications. They're either going to say, look, send me the banking letter that shows that, or send me a bank account that I can, a bank phone number and an account I can verify, right? So that money is going to talk in that case. Now, the thing is this, agents, the reason why they need all that is because they want to know you're already going to make the movie. Here's what they don't want, just so you know. They don't want you attaching their client and then going out raising money using their client's name. That's the biggest fear. End of story. That's the only thing they don't want. So, and that's almost everything. Because once an actor says he wants to do it, or once he makes a deal, then he's doing the movie. You could say he's doing the movie. You're going to say that. Now, if it's a movie they really want to make, let's say it's like, and these are movies that tend to fall under like the passion, right? The passion projects, the ones they're not getting from the studios,
with the paydays and the money already in the bank, right? Because not everything's like that. They know not everything's like that. They know there are movies out there that are tough to make, that are passion projects. So if it's that, then an agent might say, listen, this is a great screenplay. My actor wants to make the movie. He'll even attach and let you raise money using his name. That's different. Now, okay, now that's if you have a great piece of material that people are responding to it on that level, because people respond to material for all different reasons. Sometimes it's a great movie. Sometimes it's a commercial movie. Sometimes like there's like all kinds of reasons. Sometimes there's a great actor attached and that's all they're interested in. Like there's a lot of reasons why movies get made. And if you watch movies, they're not all great, right? Most of them suck. But why is that? It's because they're not getting made just because the script's great. So, there's all kinds of reasons why people engage on projects. Sometimes, again, I mentioned the Bruce Willis of it all, which, whatever, it's fine, as long as Bruce Willis, isn't being taken advantage of, and, he's looking for a payday and the filmmaker's looking to just get his film released. Okay, it's all good. Everybody wins, right? In that scenario. So, so that's just the thing. It's the agents just don't want to, they're reticent to commit, to things that aren't set up. That if it's just you going to an agent, they're going to want to know there's maybe some financials behind it, and you can use that money as leverage to maybe get somebody's attention. Like, I've done that before with like a bank letter, and it's not, at the end of the day, it may or may not make the difference. But if you've got some money in the bank, or if you've got some development money, yeah, that might make a difference to a producer, because a producer might say, hey, look, I'll come on, I'll help you with this project, but we got to create the materials. So I have to produce a promo reel, I have to make a pitch deck, I have to do a budget. And you could say, well, I have the financing for all that already. And that might actually convince a producer to want to engage, because otherwise a producer has to find that money or pay for it out of his own pocket. And if he's not a producer on that list with like a studio deal, he may not be able to do that. So yeah.
All right, so we have done exactly 2 hours. Would you, out of generosity of your spirit, allow some questions from people?
I'm here to go, for a while if you want. Sure.
Okay, great. So then can I ask one question quickly? So by the way, everyone, if anyone wants to inquire, more information, ask questions from Steve, or whatever the inquiries are, please email us at info@hollywoodfilmacademy.com, and we'll be sure to answer your questions, so on and so forth. So Steve, what would it take for a foreign filmmaker to grab your attention? For instance, if they have a project, so would it be exactly the same process that you have described, the query letter and things like that?
If their materials are not like in perfect English, it's going to be very difficult to work with them. So if you're a foreign filmmaker, you're probably going to need to hire, and I've done this for people as a consultant. You're going to probably need to convert your screenplay into, proper English. Now, that's a thing for me that is, it's not to say that you can't overcome that, but for me, the way I'm doing business, I just don't have a huge staff of people. It's just going to be easier for me to engage with people that have materials like that are ready to go, right? Because I'm just not going to have time to put lots of work and energy. I can't take a screenplay and put it into perfect English. I mean, I can. If someone wants to pay me to do that, I can do that. No problem. But understand, I want them to be a little further along. So when I get the screenplay or the pitch deck or whatever it is, that I can start sending it out. Like that there's not like lots of preparation to do. So I would say that, if you're writing to me and you're a foreign filmmaker, that letter has to be like in perfect English, because a lot of times it's not. And I'm going, oh, wow. And there's a lot of communication, issues with culture, different cultural things. There's communication issues on LinkedIn with just the written word. And, there's a lot of things in the way that make this harder. So I'm sort of reluctant to get in the business with somebody if I'm seeing that there are these things in place, I'm more saying to them, let me help you get to a place where you can then go out to producers and these things aren't going to be, you know, issues. And I think that's with a lot of, I speak for myself, but I think like a lot of producers, and I know a lot of producers really won't engage with people in foreign countries because it's just too hard to work with.
Robert, did you want to ask question?
Yeah,
Elgin.
hi. Hi,
Hey.
Steve.
Yeah, Robert, yes,
Elgin.
go ahead.
Basically, it's rewinding a bit on back to your pitch deck, part of the lecture. Basically, say you've got your pitch deck all beautiful and your show reel to send out, and the producer is interested. Very often, writers or other producers will send this out, and if you say you're interested, you'll send out a script. Very often the scripts are not in the perfect condition, so you can read, a producer will read the first 10 or 20 pages and they can tell very quickly whether a writer knows what he's doing or not. Now, if the pitch is great and it seems interesting, but the script is not professional, what are you going to do?
Well, I have the script converted into a professional format. It's not that big of a stumbling block, and if you're not really willing to do that, I'm not sure how far you're willing to go.
Sure.
I mean, the script is going to that's going to be the determining factor, right? So that you just said it, the first 10 pages, not only the script, like a lot of people give this advice, they go, or they do consulting this way. They go, I'm a consultant for the first, 20 pages of your script. I'm going to show you how to make that first 20 pages so good that the producer wants to make the movie, right?
Sure.
So yeah, that makes sense.
So
You're right.
really, before you send it out, it would be wise, in my opinion, to work with a script consultant.
Yeah, or just, when you say script consultant, it just needs to be, for format, if we're talking about format's easy, okay? If you're talking creatively in terms of the development of the script, that's more difficult. You have to get notes, you have to do rewrite, right? So depending on what you're talking about, the first easiest thing is format. So that's got to be gangbusters. The second thing, which is the creative, that doesn't have to be perfect. But if you understand you got 10 pages, just like with the email, you got 8 sentences, if that. Yeah, you got to make sure those first 10 or 20 pages is really strong from a story, perspective. So you're hooking people. Now, the best way to do that, the quickest way to do that is to introduce the conflict. Introduce your protagonist, and it's like your log line. Introduce your protagonist, and introduce the conflict right away.
Sure.
Right? That will engage people. That will engage
I think
people.
a lot of scripts fall down because within the 10, 20 pages, you read them and you can see it's full of exposition. The writer's not showing the reader what's happening. He's telling them, which is a sin.
Yeah, that occurs too, where it's just, it's expositional. That's what I was talking about with your synopsis and even your log line. If you write it expositionally, it's like, I'm trying to think of a really good bad one, but it's just like all this flowery language that doesn't mean anything, that you can't really hone in on the specific, points of what makes it interesting, so yeah, there are a few answers to that question. So yes, absolutely has to be in proper format. That's unforgivable. That you can't get beyond. Development in terms of, is it written well? So is it written visually? That's something that can be developed. Is the story being told right? That's something that can be developed, and producers give a little more leeway for those things.
My
Okay.
second comment or query is about LLCs. If you're going to be you've been talking from the angle of being a writer, but if you're going to be a producer, surely you need an LLC in order to make deals with people and the rest of it, and option
No.
scripts and
Not at all.
no?
Not at all. Nope. There's no law that says you have to have an LLC.
No, there's no law, but LLCs offer you some legal protections and the rest of it.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. And we could have a full course on that. But if you're just a writer doing option deals or whatever, you might want to incorporate, you could incorporate yourself. But again, I don't recommend doing that because of the tax. That creates a huge tax liability.
No, but if you're a producer and you want to option a script, say, isn't it better to have a legal entity to do that rather than an individual?
Yeah, probably. If you're worried about being sued, yes. Yeah. I'm not worried about being sued. And
No,
I'm not,
sure.
yeah, but you know, I don't have an LLC. I do all kinds of business without it. Now, some people may say that's foolish. I don't know, but I'm not paying $800 in taxes, and I'm not taking in that kind of cash to an LLC. I'm not, you know, if it's a couple $100,000 a year, then yeah. But if you're just doing like, you know, $5,000 option deals or something, you don't have to worry about it. It's gonna be more of a liability than it is a protection.
But if you're raising development money, you need it.
If people are giving you money for development, yes, you should have an LLC.
Okay.
But look, this is not like my area of expertise. You need to talk to a lawyer. You should not be listening to you shouldn't just be listening to everything I'm saying and then taking all your action based on what I'm saying. I'm just giving you my take on it too. So I highly recommend that if you're at this point where you're getting serious, like you're that serious, and you'll get to that point, you know, hopefully, then you want to be talking to, like, you can't just take a 2-hour course and then know everything to do. So you want to talk to your lawyer, and you want to talk to an accountant. Those are the two people that will tell you what to do with respect to this, not me.
Sure.
Necessarily.
Okay, Robert, thank you so much once again. Robert is gonna actually read a masterclass on 15th of September that will have to do with legal side of things, as well as the financing. So next we're gonna take a couple questions, no more, we don't have time. So Yiljas is next, and after that will be George. Yiljas, please unmute your mic.
I won't spend a lot of time. I'll be very fast.
Okay.
First of all, Steve, thank you for your time, in essence, and for the movies that you've done. I grew up with some of them, and you inspired me a lot. My question is, let's say you have an ultra low budget feature film, or it's a low budget feature film, below $2 million. Let's say you made it. You had an amazing project, and it's a dark comedy. What is the best way to sell it?
Yeah, you know, and I was going to get into this too, and maybe it's on the outline or not. But when you make a movie like that, that's like another way. So in that case, you're going to go through. Well, okay, let me just back up. Now, all right, so the movie's done now. Have you submitted it to film festivals?
Yep.
Okay,
film
so you're already
film markets.
Yeah, so you're all right. So and you haven't sold it yet, right?
Well, I'm about to go to Santa Monica. It's AFI in November, then MIPCOM at the end of October. That's the further steps. And before I do that, I guess that's the great chance to ask this question.
Yeah. Okay. So what I just did this with a film, and you got to be a little careful because what you're going to be approached by sales agents. Maybe you've already been approached by sales agents. Is your movie on IMDb Pro? Is it listed on IMDb Pro?
Not yet.
Okay.
And there's a couple of reasons. The major thing is that we're just starting the promo company because the movie is going to be out in Kazakhstan in March.
Okay.
So at this point, we just finished the film, and now we're starting the promo company.
All right, but put it up on IMDb Pro. See, that's something you can do even before you start the film. Have the artwork on there. Have that it's in post-production on there, and you will have people come after you who are sales agents. Who I don't trust many of them, by the way, but I'm just telling you that you will have sales agents, and their process will be the following: they will bring it to an aggregator. An aggregator is a company like Gravitas or Freestyle. Those are the two aggregators here in the States that are like the main aggregators. An aggregator these days is now also a distribution company, because the aggregator will then license it to Netflix. They will put it up on all the platforms. They will license it to Netflix. They will attempt to anyway. They will roll it out on all the platforms. So they will find somebody who can do that. So the aggregator who will generally do that for you will be like Freestyle, which is a distribution company, or Gravitas, which is now also a distribution company, and they will release your film for you. That's where you're at. So the trick with that is, it's not the release of the film that's the hard part. It's the marketing of the film that makes all the difference. Anybody can release a film, but not anybody can market a film. That's the
100%.
difference. So that's why these companies have gone into business. Now, the thing you have to be careful of, they won't ask you for money up front necessarily, although this gets very dicey, and I could do another 20 hours on it. And I know Gia would never want me to do that. But and sales agents will also charge you a lot of money, and you must be careful with them, because they will charge you a lot of money just to get it to one of those companies, which is not going to be the be all and end all at the end of the day. So before you do this, check in with me, and I will answer more questions about it, because it is very dicey to do those things. It's not easy, but yes, you can do all those things, but submit it to festivals. If you win a festival, then these companies might offer you what's called an MG, which is a minimum guarantee. And again, I know I'm getting long-winded, but there's a lot to talk about.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
you just
Thank you so much.
excellent questions, guys. You just, if again, if anything, if you need some more consultation or you have more questions, you can always ask me or Steve. Okay, just
Thank you. Appreciate
let
it.
us know. Yeah, let us know.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
I mean,
Thanks.
I provide consulting. It's, I try not, I offer money back guarantee on all my services, because I only do it to help writers. And I only take money from people I know I'm going to be able to help. So I don't try not to charge a lot of money either, but I can do it hourly. I can do it, I can work a situation out with people, just want to help people out. So if you need that kind of guidance, I recommend doing like a couple hours where we can personally design like a program for you, where you can ask questions and where you can have like access to me to ask other questions. So I just throw that out there.
Yeah, again,
Sounds
just guys, again, just email us and we'll
Yeah, go
provide-
through Gia, but everything
will.
here has to run through the Hollywood Film Academy. That's who I'm aligned with. So as long as you're going through the Hollywood Film Academy, if you're part of this webinar, then you're on board with the Hollywood Film Academy, and Gia is happy to make all the introductions and stuff as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, it sounds like we could do a class, a real course and a class on this thing, because Steve, you have a lot of knowledge. Obviously, none. I mean, we could squeeze in some into 2.5 hours that we spoke, but thank you so much, and thank you everyone who participated. Also, a quick reminder: make sure that you are registered for our portals on the website, so we can send you all the materials from this masterclass. Okay, Steve, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, and I just wanted to remind you all, Hollywood Film Academy brings Hollywood to you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye now. Good luck,
Bye.
everybody.